In health coaching and beyond, Tim and I aim to mix up conversations between the two of us, chewing over hot topics, latest news, emerging ideas, but also bringing you conversations with thought leaders and people we admire in the field of health coaching and beyond. People we hope will help you think well and spark interesting ideas for yourself. This week, leading up to Christmas, Tim and I are back together to consider some of the pressures people face at Christmas. While some excitedly count down the days, for others it can be a really stressful time of year. We consider the importance of self-compassion at Christmas. We actually think it's a key feature of health coaching at any time of year. But in this episode, we consider some ideas for building in self-compassion to your festive plans. We discover Tim hasn't been sending Christmas cards for years and feels no guilt. We consider some of our top tips for looking after yourself and also finish with a small gift that could make all the difference to those you love and even to those you don't. As always, we hope it makes you think, and we'd love to hear your ideas too. Hello, Tim. It's you and me back in the seat together.
Yeah, and I love it. You've got this Santa hat, which kind of makes everyone think you're the fun one. But, I could be fun too, just to be clear. But you just didn't give me the warning. That's all it is,
Some of us dress for the occasion. Some of us just muscling on through life, eh? But
Yeah.
of course, for people listening on the podcast, they won't see my beautiful Santa hat. But those of you watching on YouTube, you will be able to see it in full Technicolor glory.
It does look good. I mean, it suits you. I mean, you kind of got the whole kind of the red shirt. People won't see that either, and the green.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like you've gone full on Christmas, which is good.
Look, well, that is appropriate because it is our Christmas thing. I mean, no pressure, but. Well, actually, that's sort of our theme, really, Tim, isn't it? It is about not feeling unduly pressured at Christmas. In fact, we thought we'd talk a little bit about self-compassion.
Yeah. So self-compassion, looking after yourself. Because again, it is a really fun time, but it's also a busy, hectic time for a lot of people. And I think it's just really important that we all take the time that we need to look after ourselves, and some self-compassion will be a good thing to do. So what is it that I suppose, what are the kind of things that, what are the things that I suppose are stressful for you at Christmas, I suppose? Let's start there, and then we can think about
well, it's
self-compassion.
interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think Christmas is one of those times, isn't it, where there is a pressure, isn't there? I think a lot of people really don't like Christmas. You're under pressure to sort of perform, aren't you? To be social, to sort of like live up to expectations, to give the right presents, to make the right ums and ahs, to make sure that all the cards are written. I mean, do you feel that pressure to get all the cards out? Make sure you haven't forgotten anybody?
Well, I've given myself permission not to do that for a number of years. In fact, we've still got some thank you cards from our wedding that we have not yet still sent. And that was 25 years ago. So, I think I've released myself from that particular pressure.
Well, that's good. So do you not get any cards then? Did people not send you cards back?
No, we do get cards. But I think people have low expectations of us at Christmas when it comes to cards. I mean, with obviously high expectations for other things, but just not cards.
Well, that's amazing. So you've released yourself from the guilt every time a card comes and we haven't sent them a card for the last 20 years, but they keep sending us a Christmas card. There's no guilt, no worries at all.
Yeah. And when we move house and they still find us, it's unbelievable.
That's incredible. Well, that is a skill, Tim, to be able to just, release yourself from that pressure. But, in all seriousness, it's true, isn't it? Actually, Christmas sometimes is not a nice time for people. And I think it's really important to prioritize self-compassion because from our point of view, when it comes to health coaching, sort of self-compassion, self-kindness, feeling that you have some self-worth, self-belief, is actually our foundation, really, isn't it, to what builds, a coaching approach.
Exactly. And the thing is, that's what we're wanting to build in other people. It's very difficult, I think, to build that in other people, that kind of self-belief, self-compassion, self-worth, if you are struggling to hold that for yourself. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think it's quite a tough job, I think, if that's what we're doing all the time and we're not showing that same kind of kindness. We're not walking that walk for ourselves. So, and again, I don't want that to be a pressure either, by the way, but I think it would be just really, really important for people to take a bit of time to think about themselves, look after themselves, which I know is people maybe think that's not the Christmas spirit. It's all about giving to others, but actually we do need to make sure that we are giving to ourselves as well. What do you think?
So I get you. So actually, when it comes to coaching, having compassion for yourself as the coach is equally as important as trying to build self-compassion in the person you're supporting.
Yeah, agree. And sometimes that is what comes up, in supervision conversations. It is that, that people are really struggling, but sometimes they're struggling more with their own kind of feelings and how it feels for them more than maybe some of the work they're doing with the client. So, and again, I suppose good supervision takes account of that. It's, it is that normative, formative, but it's that restorative piece of supervision, which I think is really important. So, but again, you're not always going to have that conversation with with a supervisor. So, who you can you have that conversation with over the Christmas period? That might be also important for people.
So restorative. Tell us a little bit about that, Tim. In fact, when it came to supervision, you mentioned three things there, didn't you? Normative, formative, and restorative.
Yeah. So, normative is the kind of people kind of meeting the standards, and then formative is the developmental. It's the learning, and then restorative is a kind of it's the rather than what are you doing, is how are you doing. I mean, it's that kind of
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
So just that
yeah.
checking in with people, which again, people can get that regular supervision, but also it's just really good practice, isn't it? Just to do it for yourself, with yourself. How am I doing? Brilliant in the presence of someone else, I think, better. But again, just checking in with yourself, how you're doing would be a really important thing to do, and probably a really important thing to do over the Christmas period as well, when there's all these extra
Yeah.
pressures going on.
Yeah, it's a great time, isn't it? So, it's a good time to practice then, isn't it? We like to reframe these challenging times, don't we, as an opportunity to practice your skills. So it's a great time, whether you're a coach, a supervisor, whether you're wanting to just improve your self-management of yourself, self-care, looking after yourself. In all those situations, self-compassion is really important.
So, Ollie, what do you do to look after yourself, would you say?
Well, I must admit, I am a real fan of gratitude. We talk about, don't we, in our courses, sometimes sort of rounds of appreciation. And there's really good evidence, isn't there, that finding things to be grateful for is really good for our mental health. And it creates a positive sort of context and thought process in us, isn't it? And I think Christmas is a great time for that. And what one of my tricks is, in our family, we like to think about our top 10 photos of the year. So, we all take photos on our camera, don't we? Do you know what I mean? In fact, most of the time we don't look back on them at all, do we? But is Christmas, maybe Christmas into New Year, a good time just to take yourself off and have a little look back over your photos of the year? And can you refine down your top 10 photos that you're grateful for the moments that happened? Maybe it was something you did by yourself. Maybe it was something you did with some other people. Maybe it was a selfie that made you smile. What were your top 10 moments of the year? So that will be one of my top tips. I'll be doing that. My gratitude gallery for the year.
I like it. I've just written that down because it's not something I've ever done before. On
You've
the
never
phone,
done
you
it.
sometimes you get prompts, don't you, of kind of, times over many, many years. But actually, or this time last year, all that type of thing. But actually, yeah, actually consciously going through, I mean, goodness, it's going to take a bit of time, but that might be a good thing to do. Taking a bit of time out for yourself just to do that would be a useful thing to do, wouldn't it? Just to kind of time to reflect on that and then to be able to share that with other people. I like it. So do you?
Yeah, it's quite good fun. I
Yeah,
mean, you might want to do it on your own, but you also might want to do it with a little group. It's quite fun. You can just like sort of, challenge yourselves. What your top 10, and maybe even tell a little bit of a story with it if you've got time. What's the story behind it? What made that moment so good for you? Yeah,
yeah.
something to think about.
It's a
That's
great.
one of my top tips. What have you got, Tim? What's on your
Well,
list for self-compassion at Christmas?
Well, I'm going to take that one. I'm going to take that one. I think the other thing for me, because I mean, I came from a really big family. So there were seven of us children. So you can imagine Christmases growing up where it was absolute chaos, which I absolutely loved. But I think the thing I learned was the really importance of kind of taking some time out for yourself. So, taking yourself off, whether that's for kind of a short walk. I'm not saying long walks in the Peak District by yourself
When you
necessarily.
disappear for half a day. Where's Tim
Exactly.
gone? We haven't seen him. We haven't seen him since Christmas Eve.
I'll be back at dinner time. Yeah. So those days of going long walks, no, but just those short walks, just taking a little bit of time. And I suppose for me, because I'll go running with the dog. Yeah, the dog still needs to go out, so I will be doing that anyway. And that's normally a kind of quite a good kind of it sets me up for the day doing that. But I'm just thinking taking time out just for yourself, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, get out, maybe away from other people is
Fresh
also
air.
good.
There's
Yeah.
something, isn't there, about getting out in the open? And there is something definitely about listening to the sounds of nature. But maybe people might take this podcast with them, Tim. And what we're going to try and make it sort of 25, 30 minutes. It could be just a little special treat for yourself to think about all the things you could do for self-compassion.
Yeah.
He
Listen
says,
to
hopefully.
Listen to Ollie and Tim. I'm not sure that would make it onto the top 10
Yeah.
or top
Okay. Well,
100.
find the podcast of your choice if that's the sort of thing you like to do.
Yeah, we could be one of them. We could be on the playlist. I mean, we don't have to be, the only thing that people take out. with them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They could take the dog. They could, yeah, like you say, just get fresh air and listen to the sounds of nature. Whatever takes your fancies. I guess it's about doing the thing that's right for you, isn't it? Not feeling you ought to do something. I love that. I remember Lee Vaughan always says to me when we're doing the pain course, he's someone with lived experience, and he's always talking about the sort of like, the could versus the should. It's like, it's nice to have the option to do the things that you choose that you could do, but you're only going to choose the things you really want to do, as opposed to the sort of the should, things you feel you ought to do. And I think part of self-compassion is giving yourself time to do the stuff you really want rather than the things you think you should do.
Yeah, and there's loads of that, isn't there, that comes from our kind of childhood, our upbringing, kind of what's expected of us at Christmas, and the order that things are done. And I remember,
Yeah.
I suppose the difference when you're in a partnership, or you kind of for the first time you go for a Christmas at a new partner's parents' house or something, and there's a totally different way of doing things. Who opens the presents in front of each other, or who opens the presents one at a time while everyone else watches. I can't
Yeah.
think of anything worse than that.
Yeah. Don't rush them. Don't rush them. Oh, Tim's opening Granny's present. Yeah.
Everyone watch, so that kind of stuff, which would be absolutely, I wouldn't, yeah, I don't like that. That feels like an extra pressure for me.
I'm just getting I just can't help myself imagining you just sitting there having opened all your presents, a big pile of open presents whilst everybody else is just opening one at a time. What have you done, Tim? What have you
Well,
done?
I'm just trying to find a good one. That's the thing, just rushing through.
I know exactly what you mean. Is it was a real moment for me when I realised that not everybody sort of some families open all their presents before breakfast, even, don't they? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, we
unbelievable.
we were sort of stockings, and then of course you have your breakfast, your smoked salmon, maybe a bit of Bucks Fizz, and then you go for a walk before you open your presents. You have to get out and have a walk. There's an order, isn't there, in most families?
There's an order to doing things, yeah, and you break that really at your peril, I suppose. And I suppose, but we then come up with our own kind of traditions to some degree. But then I suppose that might create its own pressure, if we kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
rigidly stick to this is the way we do things. Now this year, I've been telling people on courses and things that this year is the first time in 2 decades where it will be just myself and Alison and the three kids. We're all kind of grown up now. So it's the first time. So I think we're going to see, let's do things a little bit differently. Why not? We can do whatever we want. So
Shake
that's
it up. Well,
exciting.
what are you gonna do this year that's out of the ordinary then?
Well, I think that there'll be more games. I think there'll be maybe more games. Not that we didn't play games, when other people are around, but I think yeah, I think there'll be more games. There'll be more dancing, maybe. Um, I
What,
don't know.
before
I don't know.
before the Christmas dinner? You're gonna be dancing before the Christmas dinner, or are you thinking sort of
I think we
later
might
on?
be dancing during getting the prep for the Christmas dinner. I think that might be a thing. Who knows?
Dancing around the turkey. We have a turkey?
No, 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 no. We've stopped the turkey tradition.
Oh, right,
Do you
okay.
know
Yeah.
what? That is again, that was a real stress. It creates a massive stress for this essentially what is kind of a Sunday lunch. Essentially, it kind of becomes for some people anyway, and for me a little bit a real stressful thing. One year we had the turkey, and this has happened to lots of people. The turkey was off. So we went to we went to
It's happened to all of us at one point,
yeah,
hasn't it?
and you go to kind of prep the turkey and you think, "Hang on, that doesn't smell
Mm,
quite right." And so I
yeah.
remember at church on Christmas Day having some chicken breasts kind of pushed underneath the pew for us to kind of take home, and that's what we'd have. But now we have the chicken breast stuffed with um um some cream cheese and some bacon and some cranberries, and we just stuff that in the chicken breast and wrap it in bacon. Amazing, amazing.
Nice, a much less chance of that
Well,
disappointing or being
yeah,
undercooked or going off.
yeah, or dry, and it's done in 30 minutes, the same amount of time for your roasties. So there's none of this kind of timing thing. So again, maybe you could release the pressure of people having to do a turkey. I know it's
Yeah,
traditional, but I
I
don't
like it.
think it's necessary. And let's do something else. Do something more straightforward. I think turkey is a relatively new invention. I think for Christmas. So let's do something else.
Love it. I love it. And that sort of brings us that theme, doesn't it? We were mulling before, weren't we? That you know, there's sometimes a bit of a playoff for people, isn't there? Like sort of sometimes Christmas is a chance to really let loose, just indulge. Don't worry about a diet. Don't worry about sticking to, sort of alcohol limits. It's a time to really, just let yourself go free, isn't it? For some people, I think that's a great thing, just to sort of release yourself and just almost refresh the, just, um, yeah, you just clear your head a bit, really, isn't it? And then I know for other people that doesn't work. That actually, particularly, I'm thinking now about people who might struggle with food addiction, people who have had sort of worked really hard all year to kind of keep their diet tight, to reduce carbohydrates, to have a good diet, perhaps. And then they do have to be cautious, don't they? And looking after themselves and being kind to themselves means planning so that you can sustain some of those changes you've made. So there's sometimes a bit of a playoff, isn't there? And I think about it is quite good to think ahead and think, be purposeful about it. If I'm letting loose, I'm doing it for a reason, but there'll be an end point when, I come back to normal and I know, great, that's a sort of a pressure valve and a release of the stressfulness of life. And for other people, that planning ahead will involve just sort of, respecting themselves to say, I'm going to keep to my plan. I'm going to give myself treats in different ways. And that little bit of planning and making it purposeful, I think, helps.
Yeah, I suppose it's about being clear in your own mind, isn't it? Why you're doing it. So as you say, you're doing it kind of mindfully or intentionally, I suppose, to some degree. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing, that struck me, sorry, Tim, I'm on a roll here now, was that, sometimes we have these sort of preconceived patterns, don't we? You fall back into that sort of, that sort of sibling pattern that you've always grown up with since you were sort of 5 years old, and you fit back in those rhythms and you tell yourself stories, don't you? That actually, if you do take a step back, aren't really true. We talk about this, don't we? About challenging limiting assumptions. Very often, don't we? We have these assumptions that, and I heard this story from someone who I was supporting a while back, and it's interesting. They were saying, I just have this feeling that when I turn up for Christmas, it's a bit of an imposition, that people are sort of, that it's almost a bit of an annoyance. And I sort of thought, I said, well, what do you think about that now in the safe space when we're looking at it? Is that true? Are people annoyed when you turn up? And they said, well, there's a kerfuffle and there's a bit of, I put people out their rhythm. I draw attention to myself. And I was saying, well, but is that an annoyance? So people really find that annoying? And they said, no, they don't. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it can be good, isn't it, to question yourself. And then if it's not true, what is a better way? What's a more honest and more truthful way of looking at it? That's more helpful for you. And what I really loved about this story is that they said, well, when that comes to my mind, I think about the arrival that Maggie Smith had in the film Room with a View, when she arrives unexpected and everybody's sort of flustered and she can't find the change for the taxi and so on. And it is all a bit awkward and a bit annoying to everybody. And they said, I think of myself like that. And so I said, okay, well, can you reframe that then? How about you reframe? What would it look like if Maggie Smith arrived and it wasn't annoying? And they got a really good story that said, well, when you're remembering that film, is it in color or is it in black and white? And they said, well, it's in color. I said, well, can you make it a black and white movie? Okay, all right then. And then I said, is there anything else you could change about this in your imagination that would make it different? And they said, oh, well, Maggie Smith could arrive in a Morgan car. I thought, so exactly sure what they look like. I think they're some kind of fancy sports car. And then they said they were on a roll. They said, well, and then maybe, well, she could be driving. Maggie Smith could be driving. Then she wouldn't have to worry about the change. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? And she got on this real roll about sort of, and maybe rather than coming to the back entrance, Maggie Smith would come to the front entrance, this big hall, and she'd walk in. And because the car was so noisy, everyone would be rushing to see what was going on, and it would be interesting and exciting. And in sort of reframing that image they had in their minds, it's quite a great technique of just sort of diffusing some of those stories we've always told ourselves. And then, it's then, and obviously, you realize you can do that in your imagination. Well, why not apply that same technique to some of those fixed beliefs you've held about Christmas and the patterns and the stories we tell ourselves? And I really like that one. That really, I appreciated that little journey.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Those kind of the assumptions that we hold, and I know Brené Brown talks about the kind of the stories that we tell ourselves. What are those stories that we're telling ourselves which are kind of limiting us in this particular situation? And do we think they're true? Do we actually think they're true? When we take a moment, maybe when we're out for our walk, or we take a bit of time aside, do we actually think that is true? Or is there a better way of thinking about it or looking at it? And, what could we assume that would be more useful to us in that situation? Yeah, definitely people could do that. And it sounds like that was really great bit of work that you did there to support that person.
I think it's just illustrates to people that you can use your imagination to reframe and, make these stories a little bit softer and maybe shift your fixed beliefs, can't you? Well, what do people do if you ask them, is it true? And they say, yeah, well, it is true. Where do you go from there, Tim?
Well, I think the question the more specifically is, do you think it's true? So rather than is it true, do you
I think
think
it's
it's true? Well, sometimes people will give you all sorts of reasons that they think it's true, which don't make sense. Do you know what I mean?
true.
They'll say, "Oh, it's because this happened in my childhood," and you think, "Hang on a minute, you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s. Is this thing that was said in your childhood, does that still ring true now?" And it's just allowing people to go, "Oh, actually, no." So sometimes the reasons people bring don't kind of make kind of logical sense, I suppose. And I think we can gently challenge them. So I think that's a useful technique.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's lovely. Yeah, that is lovely. So
But
anything else, any other thoughts for Christmas then?
well, I was just thinking that I have had some relatives up and we had them. They were here for 4 hours, okay, over lunch and kind of extended lunch. And there was presents exchange and all that. And at the end of that 4 hours, I kind of think, really, how much of a conversation did I have with people? I mean, a real kind of conversation. Because, like you said, when you have siblings come, everyone's kind of fits into their normal kind of pattern, and there's banter and all that. But actually, and that's good, and it is good for a time. And let's do that. Let's definitely do that. But I also think it would have been lovely to have just taken a moment with each of the people and just listen to them and kind of listen a little bit more in terms of what was really going on for them. I think that's one of the things that is missing sometimes when people gather together is maybe just taking the opportunity to have a conversation with one person and just give them an opportunity to really talk and to think about things really deeply. And I think for a lot of people, that's maybe the kind of the best gift they're going to get at Christmas, because it is so rare that people truly listen to you. It's more likely, yeah, there'll be interruption and then people will be speaking over each other. And sometimes I find myself just sitting back and just observing that with a little kind of smile internally, thinking, just noticing what's happening, but also taking a bit of an opportunity just with one person for a moment, even 5 minutes, just to kind of just check in with them. You know, what's been happening, what's important to them at the moment, and just listen deeply. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I love that idea that like the best gift at Christmas is the gift of listening.
Yeah, it'd be good. It would be good, wouldn't it? And again, we talked about some really good gifts for people. I mean, there's time. There's still time to go and get gifts. So one book I have given to someone is Nancy Klein. You won't be surprised. Nancy Klein's book, The Promise That Changes Everything. And the promise that changes everything is, I will not interrupt you. Wouldn't that be lovely?
It'll be lovely, and and you did make me laugh. I've got two things that are making me laugh here. Is that you gave? I think didn't you tell me that you're giving that to one of your relatives? Hopefully they're not listening, as a sort of subtle hint. Maybe you shouldn't interrupt so much. But I'll let you come back on that one. But the other thing that really made me smile there was just thinking about, sometimes you forget to get a present for someone, don't you? And you sort of like, you're that, oh no, Aunt so and so's turned up and we haven't got them a gift. Maybe you could just go sit them down in a corner and say, I'm going to give you the gift of listening for Christmas.
See how
Would
it
that be a
goes.
get out of jail card? I don't know. Would that be a bit tight?
Well, I think it might be really appreciated. I think might people feel a bit odd, especially if everyone's waiting around for the unwrapping. So actually, you're listening to them, but everyone else is watching.
Yeah. I'm sure I would go down well in our family if I sort of, said to my kids, wow, this year we've given you the gift of listening. So, I'm not
I agree.
belittling it at all. It's a lovely thing. And I totally agree. We so very rarely do actually listen to each other, do we? So maybe that's a way that we can give compassion to somebody else. And compassion does grow, doesn't it? If you can encourage each other to listen to each other, it maybe reciprocate back to you as well. It's a sort of a self-compassion thing that goes round, isn't it?
Yeah. I agree. Is there anything else, Ollie, that might be helpful, I suppose, for people over Christmas period? Because it is an important time.
It is. Yeah. No, I mean, I think I would just encourage people just to make sure you do a little bit of what you really need. We won't know what it is. It's not for us to suggest to you, but, it's a time not to feel guilty about, and amongst it all the giving, all the thinking of other people you do, just make sure you get a little bit of what you need as well. Like you say, whether that's a walk, whether it's a run, whether it's a time to listen to something, whether it's even just, a long bath, something that you can give to yourself that just shows that you're looking after yourself and you value yourself. I think that's just really important.
Yeah. Because, ultimately, we're going to be getting back after this Christmas period. We will be getting back into it. And actually, if we're getting back into it and we're absolutely exhausted, and goodness me, there'll be loads of reasons why people can't do anything other than just get through. Wouldn't it be lovely to do more than that if we can, so that we arrive back for the next bit, for the next phase, having had a little bit of restoration? I think that'll be really important.
100%, 100%. Well, I'm so looking forward to God, all those years we've had of being doctors, haven't we, when we've been negotiating who's going to do Christmas Eve, who's going to do the Christmas shift. And I have to say, I really do take my hat off to, caring staff the world over that do find themselves working over the Christmas period and don't get a proper time to down tools and take a break. So thank you to them. If you're one of those listening, it's wonderful. I've definitely been there many years, worked Christmas days. And then, there's something quite cool about feeling like you're giving to people when they need it. So big up you if you're doing that. But if you get the chance to have down tools and have a nice break, please make the most of it.
Great. So all the best. Have a really, really good and restful Christmas, folks.
Too right. Merry Christmas, folks.